You smell of fear. The voice resonated. Not in his ears, but somehow directly against his ribs, a low thrum that vibrated through the scavenge's hull plating Kale was pressed against. He didn't flinch, not visibly anyway. His hand tightened on the grip of the repurposed plasma cutter hidden in his sleeve. The low light of the derelict station filtered through corroded ports, casting long, distorted shadows that danced with the hum of failing power conduits. She stepped closer, a shape of fluid shadow against the gloom, her form difficult to define in the poor light, only the slightest glint suggesting complex surfaces, and that resonant voice that felt like a physical touch. "Human, why do you trespass here?" Kale kept his breathing even. "Not trespassing. Salvaging. Same as you, I imagine." His own voice felt rough, too loud in the quiet. The station was ancient, rumored to be haunted or cursed, abandoned by the species who built it millennia ago. That made it a gold mine for relics and tech, but also lethally dangerous. He'd expected traps, maybe other scavengers, but not her, not something that spoke inside his bones. He still couldn't make out distinct features, just an impression of height and a strange, almost shimmering quality to the air around her. The scent she mentioned wasn't something he was aware of giving off, but then alien senses were always a wild card. His pulse was definitely elevated, though survival instinct, he told himself, not fear. "This sector is unclaimed," he added, pushing off the wall slightly, putting just enough distance between them to feel less cornered, but not so much he couldn't react if she lunged. His boots crunched on loose debris. The sound seemed deafening. "Unclaimed by your kind." The resonance pulsed again, slightly sharper this time. "This place remembers, and it does not welcome intrusions." She moved with an unnerving grace, gliding rather than walking across the uneven floor. He watched her hands, long, slender, ending in multiple articulated digits that flexed and unflexed slowly. They looked capable of immense precision or tearing something apart. He shifted his weight. His training kicked in, assessing distance, angles, potential point of attack or defense. Not martial arts in the ring sense, but the gritty, desperate kind learned in back alleys and zero-G brawls. How to use leverage, strike vulnerable points, turn opponents' momentum against them. It was instinct now, honed over years of just trying to stay alive. He didn't want to fight, not against something so unknown, but he was ready. "Doesn't matter who built it," Kale said, his eyes tracking her movement. "It's empty now. Resources waiting to be picked. That's the law of the fringe." He gestured loosely with one hand, away from his body, trying to appear casual. Or lack of law, I guess. "Look, I'll take this section. You take that one?" No need to make it complicated. He could already feel the pull of the strange energy emanating from a half-buried console nearby. Ancient power source, maybe? Could be worth a fortune. But she was blocking the path. The low hum she emitted seemed to intensify as he spoke, vibrating not just in his chest, but spreading outwards, a subtle pressure on his skin. It was intensely unnerving, yet also absorbing, like standing too close to a generator, feeling the power hum through you. He forced himself to focus on the threat, not the strange sensation. "Complicated." She echoed, the word drawn out resonant. She stopped just a few feet from him. Now, in the slightly better light, he could make out the contours of her head, the curve of her neck, the way her form seemed to absorb and refract the dim light. There were subtle shifts on her surface, like patterns moving just beneath her skin, though that description felt wrong. It was more like internal light shifting, altering the perception of her form. This place is deeply complicated, and it permits few to walk its paths untouched. She tilted her head slightly, and for the first time he felt like she was truly looking at him, not just assessing his presence. The feeling was intense, like a physical touch, tracing his outline, probing beneath the surface. He felt strangely exposed, despite his layered synth leather and scavenged armor plating. You carry a stillness within you, a controlled violence. It is intriguing. Kale felt a prickle on the back of his neck. She saw too much. He trained hard to hide that controlled violence, to bury the past that forged it. Most saw just another human scavenger, beat up but persistent. This alien saw the predator underneath. "Just survival instinct," he muttered, shifting his stance again, preparing to spring. Same as anyone out here. He needed to break this strange, charged stillness she created. It was more disarming than a direct attack. So, shared salvage, or we figure out another way? He let his hand drift closer to the plasma cutter. He didn't want to draw it. Not yet. Her presence wasn't just physical. It was a force field of something else, a vibration that went beyond sound. He wondered if she was communicating with the station itself, or if this was just how she was. The shifting patterns on her form seemed to subtly change color, barely perceptible, like the deep reds and violets of a dying star. Was that a mood indicator? Another way, she agreed, and the resonance lowered, becoming softer, almost a purr that still vibrated through him. There are many ways to figure things out. Human. She took another step closer, invading the bubble of personal space he instinctively maintained. He could smell something now, faint but distinct, like ozone mixed with damp earth and something sweet floral. It was alien but not unpleasant. Your kind are known for directness, blunt force. We, however, prefer negotiation or adaptation. Her head tilted the other way, though sometimes directness is necessary, especially in places such as this, where the dangers are not always visible. She gestured with one articulated hand towards a section of wall that looked structurally sound, but which Cale now noticed was subtly shimmering, unstable on some unseen energetic level. A hidden trap. He hadn't seen it. His survival instincts were good. But clearly, they weren't calibrated for this kind of environment, this kind of opponent. All right, Cale said, his guard still up, but new layer added curiosity, grudging respect. She wasn't just posturing. She saw the trap he missed. Okay, negotiation. What's your offer? He still held the plasma cutter ready in his sleeve, but he didn't need to rely solely on physical force here. She had shown him that. He had to think, adapt, use his other skills, observation, quick assessment, even diplomacy, rusty as it was. The air thrummed around them, thicker now with her presence, with the unspoken challenge. He could feel the beat of his own heart, fast and heavy, echoing the strange resonance she projected. This wasn't just about salvage anymore. This was about navigating a first contact, a potential conflict, with something utterly alien and deeply unsettling in its power and perception. He met her unseeing gaze as best he could in the gloom, ready for whatever came next. The humming intensified for a brief moment, a sharp spike that made Cale's teeth ache, then settled back into its low thrum. My offer, the resonant voice stated, is information and passage through the sector. For now. She swept her hand, the multiple digits extending, encompassing the immediate area around the shimmering wall. This place is protected by ancient wards. They react to intent, aggression, greed, disruption. They trigger defenses you cannot evade with your blunt force. She paused, and the frequency of her hum shifted slightly, becoming almost melodic. Your salvage from this area would be minimal before the ward collapsed you. She gestured towards another passage, darker and seemingly more unstable. That path, however, it is not warded in the same way. It is merely collapsing, slowly, a different kind of danger, one perhaps better suited to your directness. Cale followed her gesture, his eyes narrowing. The passage looked like a death trap. Collapse girders, sparking conduits, unstable flooring. Negotiating that would take agility, strength, and maybe a bit of luck. His kind of danger. And what do you get out of this deal? He asked, still suspicious. Aliens weren't known for selfless generosity out here, especially not ones who pulsed with strange energy and saw through his defenses. Information isn't free. He kept his weight balanced, ready to move. The air still felt charged, the subtle patterns on her form shifting in that impossible-to-describe way. He could sense the power in her, held in check like a coiled spring. It wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, energetic. Observation, she replied, the single word vibrating with unexpected weight. Curiosity, and perhaps amusement. To see how you navigate challenges tailored to your particular skills. Her form seemed to grow slightly taller in the dim light, an illusion perhaps, but the impression of dominance was clear. This place holds many secrets. Some require delicate touch. Others require force of will. We are here to learn, to observe. She took another step back, the strange pressure on his skin easing slightly. But the awareness of her remained intense. Do you accept my offer, human? Information for safe passage and access to the collapsing path? It wasn't a question, more of a statement of terms. He felt the pull of the ancient console behind him, the promise of salvage, but the subtle warning she'd given about the ward, the knowledge she possessed of this place, it was worth more than the unknown tech. For now. All right, Kale said slowly, lowering his stance slightly, though not relaxing completely. Deal. You get your observation. I get the collapsing path. He still didn't trust her, not entirely, but her awareness of the wards had saved him from potentially triggering something lethal. And the collapsing path, while dangerous, was a known quantity. Gravity, unstable structure, failing tech, things he could handle. Things his body, honed by years of brutal physical discipline and survival, was built for. He glanced towards a collapsing passage, then back at her. She was waiting, utterly still, that low hum of constant presence. My name's Kale, he offered, feeling slightly foolish. It was a human custom. Maybe aliens didn't do names or introductions. Kale, she repeated, the sound vibrating differently this time, like water running over stones. It felt acknowledged. The patterns on her surface seemed to shift more rapidly for a moment, a flicker of something he couldn't interpret. I am called Zephyr. The resonance around her intensified again, but it felt different now. Less like a warning, more like a signature, a presence settling into the space. The collapsing path is unstable. Portions will give way without warning. There are also inhabitants, scavengers drawn to the decay. Be mindful of the floor, Kale, and the shadows. She turned fluidly, gliding past him toward the main corridor, her form blending back into the shadows. The resonant hum began to recede, but a faint echo remained, vibrating in his chest, a physical reminder of her presence, her power, and the strange deal they had just struck. He looked at the ancient console again, the one he'd come for, and then at the dark, unstable passage Zephyr had pointed him towards. His path was clear. And suddenly, the potential salvage felt secondary to the encounter he'd just had. The air grew colder as Kale moved deeper into the collapsing section of the station. Dust motes danced in the beam of his handlight, highlighting the precarious state of corridors. Sections of the floor were missing, plunging into the darkness below, and jagged metal girders twisted down from the ceiling like skeletal fingers. Zephyr's hum was gone, but her presence lingered in his awareness, a sense of being watched, observed. It was unnerving, but also strangely motivating. He moved with practiced efficiency, his body flowing over obstacles, calculating risks, using his weight and balance to navigate unstable sections. This was the kind of challenge he understood. Muscle memory took over, every step precise, every movement economical. Years of conditioning, of turning his body into a tool for survival, paid off here. He remembered the brutal dojos on Earth, the sweat, the pain, the endless repetition of movements designed to maximize efficiency and lethality. He hadn't thought of those days in a long time, but the discipline they instilled was etched into his bones. He heard the skittering sounds before he saw them. Smaller scavengers, attracted to the station's slow demise. They were common on derelicts, often mutated or desperate, dangerous in packs. He doused his light and flattened himself against the wall, listening. There were at least 3, maybe 4. Their movements were quick, erratic. He felt a brief pulse of that familiar resonance. Faint but present, Zephyr. Was she warning him? Or just observing? He focused, slowing his breathing, letting the ambient sound guide him. The scavengers were heading his way. He couldn't engage them all head-on in this unstable environment. He needed leverage. He waited until the first one was close, just around a twisted metal beam. It was a rat-like creature, oversized and covered in scaly growths, its eyes glowing with dull hunger. As it rounded the beam, Kale moved. Not a powerful strike, but precise, almost gentle redirection of its momentum. a move learned for dealing with multiple opponents in tight spaces. He used its own forward motion, a twist of his wrist and shoulder, sending it tumbling off the edge of the collapsed floor into the darkness with a shriek. The other two hesitated. He didn't pursue. He used their momentary confusion, slipping further down the corridor, using the debris for cover. It wasn't about fighting. It was about moving through, avoiding confrontation where possible, neutralizing threats efficiently when necessary. It was his martial arts, stripped down to its core function, survival. He reached a wider section, relatively stable, where a network hub hung precariously from severed cables. This looked promising. He pulled out his cutting tools and started working, the hum of the plasma cutter a stark contrast to the silence of the station. He was extracting a data core when he heard the resonance again, closer this time. He froze. Zephyr emerged from the shadows, gliding into the open space. The subtle shifting patterns on her form were more visible here, pulsing gently with internal light. They weren't just aesthetic. They seemed to correlate with the energy of the station around them. He realized she wasn't just a being. She was deeply connected to this environment, maybe even a part of it. She stopped a respectful distance away, watching him work. Effective, she stated, the resonance soft. Your movements are efficient. You do not waste energy. Like water finding the path of least resistance, yet capable of carving stone. It was a strange compliment. He felt a faint heat rise in his cheeks, uncomfortable under her scrutiny. He went back to the data core, pretending her presence didn't affect him. The smaller ones, she continued. They are merely shadows now, echoes of life that once thrived here. This place consumes. Slowly. Got that feeling? Kale grunted, finally freeing the data core. It was heavy, humming with residual power. A good score. He secured it in his pack. He turned to face her properly. So, how much observation did you get out of that? He couldn't help the wry tone. Being watched like a specimen wasn't his favorite feeling. But there was something in her presence, in that constant low hum, that was starting to erode his defenses in a way physical threats never could. It was like being bathed in a unique frequency, bypassing his conscious mind. Zephyr didn't respond directly to his question. Instead, she tilted her head again, the patterns on her form swirling with hues of violet and deep indigo. Your core, it vibrates with a different energy signature than the station's. Younger, more volatile. She wasn't talking about the data core. She was talking about him. He felt that sense of exposure again, the feeling that she could see right through his skin and bone. He didn't respond, just met her gaze, challenging her silently. She seemed to accept the challenge, holding his gaze. The air between them thickened. The low hum amplified slightly, but this time it felt warmer. It wasn't just a vibration. It was a presence, expanding, reaching out. He felt it brush against his own energy signature. That volatile core she mentioned, it was like a delicate touch, exploring the edges of his being. His breath hitched. This was something far beyond physical interaction. It was a communion of energy, of presence, and it was intensely intimate. He stood frozen, unsure how to react, how to defend against this. His martial arts were useless here. All he could do was stand and feel it, this profound, silent connection being offered, or perhaps taken. The moment stretched, charged in silent save for the station's groans and the faint, internal hum that was now a duet between them. Kale felt raw, exposed in a way he hadn't been since he lost everything that mattered. His carefully constructed walls felt flimsy under the weight of Zephyr's resonant presence. The subtle shift of patterns on her form seemed to react to him, swirling faster, brighter, a vibrant mix of blues and greens now. It was unsettling, fascinating, and undeniably captivating. He wanted to step back, break the connection, but his feet felt rooted to the decaying metal floor. Her observation was more than just sight. It was a complete sensory and energetic immersion. You carry grief, she stated, the resonant voice quieter now, softer, the words seeming to form directly in the space between them. And anger, shielded but present. She didn't ask the question. It was a simple observation, stated with a kind of quiet knowing that bypassed all his defenses. He flinched internally, the movement perhaps visible only to her. No one ever saw that. He buried it too deep. But she saw the core, the raw, still bleeding parts. He felt a sudden, irrational urge to tell her everything, to spill out the years of pain and loss, just to see how she would react, what that strange, beautiful form would show. He clamped down on it, the old instincts kicking in. Never show weakness, never reveal vulnerability. "You don't know anything about me," Cale said, his voice hoarse. He forced himself to move, taking a step back, breaking the most intense point of the energetic contact. The pressure eased, but the hum, her presence, remained. He needed distance, needed to put the scavenged data core between them, needed something solid and understandable to focus on. Just because you can sense things doesn't mean you understand them. Zephyr didn't react to his withdrawal. She remained still, her gaze fixed on him. The patterns on her form settled into a calm, steady pulsation of warm amber. Understanding is a process, Cale. It requires sharing and willingness. She extended one hand slowly, the articulated digits curving gently. It wasn't a threatening gesture. It felt invitational. Not for him to take her hand, but for him to offer something of himself. The air around her hand shimmered slightly, as if concentrating the resonance. The dangers of this place are not just physical. They are also energetic, emotional. They feed on imbalance, on hidden pain. He stared at her hand, then back at her form, trying to decipher the silent language of her shifting patterns. Was this part of her culture? A bonding ritual? Or just a strange alien attempt at empathy? It felt dangerous in a different way than the collapsing floor or the skittering scavengers. This was a danger to carefully constructed walls he lived behind. "Hidden pain is what keeps you alive out here," he said, shaking his head slightly. "Lets you see threats before they see you. Or it blinds you to path forward," Zephyr countered softly, the resonance laced with something that felt like ancient wisdom. "It makes you solid when you need to be fluid, rigid when you need to adapt." She lowered her hand slowly. "This station, it resonates with residual energy. Some of it is benign. Some is malignant. It can amplify your internal state, your grief, your anger. If left unchecked here, they could become a weapon turned against you, or against me." Cale felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He'd felt strange effects on other ancient sites, whispers in his mind, phantom touches, but nothing like the intense, physical reality of Zephyr's presence. If this station could amplify his inner turmoil, he thought of the nightmares that still haunted him, the flashes of memory he suppressed. Could they manifest here? Become real dangers? The idea was terrifying. He looked at Zephyr again, seeing her not just as an alien, a potential threat or strange ally, but as someone who understood something fundamental about this place, something that could save him or damn him. "So what?" he asked, his voice quieter now, less defensive. "How do you deal with it? The resonance?" Zephyr's form seemed to soften around the edges, the amber patterns flowing like liquid light. "You embrace it," she said simply. "You align with it. You allow yourself to be permeable, to feel rather than to suppress." She tilted her head again. "It requires vulnerability. Trust." Her gaze felt heavy on him. Trust, vulnerability, concepts he deliberately purged from his life. They were liabilities. They got you killed. Yet, in this moment, facing the potential manifestation of his deepest pain, the alternative seemed even worse. He looked at the darkness around them, at the unstable structure, and then back at the alien woman who saw his grief like a physical entity. He felt a reluctant pull towards a dangerous path she was suggesting. He stood there for a long moment, the hum of Zephyr's presence and the faint thrum of the station filling the silence. He felt the weight of the data core in his pack, a symbol of his old life, his old goals. Salvage, survival, keeping everything locked down. But this place, and the being who seemed intrinsically linked to it, demanded something else. I don't know how," Cale admitted. The words cost him more than any physical blow. The patterns on Zephyr's form shifted again, a kaleidoscope of colors, too quick to interpret. But the overall resonance felt welcoming. Zephyr stepped closer again, slowly, deliberately. The air around her grew warmer, the hum deepening. She didn't extend her hand this time. She simply stood before him, a presence of resonant energy and shifting light. "You feel," she stated, a simple fact. "You just need to allow the feeling to exist, Kale. Not fight it, not hide it. It is a part of the resonance. And in this place, everything seeks to align." She reached out, not to touch him, but to hover her articulated hand just inches from his chest, directly over where he felt that strange, pulsing hum emanating from within himself. The patterns on her hand intensified, glowing softly with that warm amber light. He could feel the heat radiating from her, feel the resonant frequency increase, matching the frantic beat of his own heart. It was a profound intimacy, a connection bypassing all his human senses, going straight to the core of him. His breath hitched again, and this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else entirely. He stood utterly still, held captive by Zephyr's strange, resonant touch that wasn't a touch at all. The amber light pulsing from her hand seemed to seep into him, a warmth that spread through his chest, easing the tightness he hadn't realized he carried there. The hum between them deepened, intertwining, creating a complex, almost melodic vibration that filled his awareness. He felt seen, not just observed, but truly seen, down the marrow of his bones, to the deepest parts of his grief and anger. And instead of feeling violated, he felt a profound sense of relief, a shedding of burdens he'd carried for too long. "It is not weak to feel," Zephyr murmured, her voice still resonant but infinitely gentle now, a vibration of pure comfort. "It is connection, to yourself, to the space around you, to another." She didn't push, didn't demand. She simply offered the space, the resonant field, for him to exist within it. He found himself taking a shaky breath, letting it out slowly. The air felt different, cleaner, less heavy. I thought feeling made you vulnerable," Kale whispered, the words rough with disuse. He was talking about his training, about the hard-won lessons of survival, but he was also talking about something else, something far more personal. "It does," Zephyr agreed, her resonance shifting slightly, a note of understanding. "But vulnerability is necessary for connection. And connection, Kale, is not weakness. It is strength, a different kind." She moved her hand slowly, not away, but to the side, gesturing toward his own chest. "Your core resonates strongly. It is powerful. Do not let the shadows within dim its light." He looked down at his chest, then back at her. He didn't understand the energetic principles she spoke of, but he understood the feeling. He felt lighter, more present. The constant vigilance, the tight knot of tension, had eased. He still felt guarded, but it was a soft guard now, not the rigid, brittle shell he usually wore. "This is weird," he said, a small, awkward laugh escaping him. Zephyr's form seemed to ripple, the patterns dancing with brighter, faster colors. It wasn't laughter, not as he knew it, but he sensed amusement, warmth. "Your term for many things you do not yet comprehend," she observed. "But effective, yes? The resonance?" "Yeah," Kale admitted. "Effective. It feels better." He looked around the decaying station with new eyes. The danger was still present, but the oppressive weight, the sense of hostile energy, had lessened. He felt more aligned, as she said. He met her gaze, and for the first time, the intense awareness he felt wasn't just exposure. It was mutual. He could feel her feeling him, not just sensing his energy, but understanding his emotional state on some profound level. And he, in turn, felt a growing curiosity about her, a desire to understand the patterns on her form, the nuances of her resonance, the depth of her alien being. "We should move," Zephyr said, her resonance settling back into a calm hum. "The structural decay is accelerating in this section. The large collapses begin soon." She turned, gliding back the way she came, toward the unstable passage. "Keep your core open, Kale. Let the resonance guide you." He hesitated for a moment, then nodded, adjusting the strap of his pack. He still had the data core, his original objective, but it felt less important now. He followed Zephyr, stepping carefully over the treacherous floor. The air felt different, charged not just with danger, but with a strange, growing intimacy. He kept his senses sharp for physical threats, But his attention was just as focused on the subtle shifts in Zephyr's resonance, the dance of light on her form, the silent conversation that was unfolding between their very beings. His body still moved with the trained efficiency of his past, but his internal state was undergoing a profound, alien transformation. The encounter hadn't been a death match, not with weapons, but it had been a challenge, a test of his emotional and energetic resilience. And in showing a flicker of vulnerability, guided by this alien presence, he felt like he had survived something far more significant than a physical confrontation. And perhaps in the process, he had earned something she had hinted at. Not mercy, but a different kind of yield, a softening, a willingness to connect. As they navigated the increasingly precarious structure, Kale found himself relying not just on his eyesight and physical agility, but on the subtle cues Zephyr's resonance provided. A low thrum from her would deepen just before a section of floor groaned ominously. A shift in the patterns on her form, a flicker of deep red, would warn him of unstable energy fields near sparking conduits. It was an alien partnership, a silent communication built on shared peril, and that strange, energetic connection forged in the darker section of the station. He moved with fluidity he hadn't felt in years, his body working in concert with her presence, dodging falling debris, timing jumps over chasms that had widened even since he'd passed through earlier. They reached a junction where a collapsing path met a wider, less damaged corridor. The air here felt calmer, though still thick with the dust of ages. Zephyr stopped, her form pulsing with a steady, bright white light. "We are through the worst of the decay," she stated, her resonance calm. "The immediate danger is lessened." Kale leaned against a sturdy-looking wall, catching his breath. His muscles ached, his nerves were frayed, but there was an exhilarated edge to his exhaustion. He hadn't just survived. He'd navigated the chaos in sync with something completely alien, something that saw and felt the world on a level he was only beginning to grasp. "Thanks," he said, meaning it. "I wouldn't have made it without whatever that was you were doing." Zephyr's form shifted, the white light giving way to that warm amber glow again. "It is alignment, Kale. Finding harmony with the existing energies. This place resonates with certain frequencies. By matching them, you move with the decay, not against it." She tilted her head. "Your core adapts quickly. Most sentient beings resist the external resonance, clinging to their internal state. You allowed yourself to blend." He thought about the moment in the darker corridor, when she'd held her hand near his chest, and he'd felt that overwhelming sense of exposure and acceptance. "You made it possible," he said. "Showed me how." He looked at her, really looked, trying to see beyond the shifting light and resonant hum. He saw intelligence, ancient wisdom, and something that felt increasingly like grace. The vague shape of her head tilted again, and the patterns on her form seemed to swirl with a hint of violet and blue, the colors of curiosity. "This station holds a central nexus," Zephyr said, changing the subject, though Kale felt the undercurrent of their shared experience still humming between them. "A focal point for its original function. It is deep within the core structure." She gestured down the less damaged corridor. "That is where we're going." "We?" Kale asked, raising an eyebrow. The deal was passage through a collapsing path. He'd gotten his data core and survived. He could leave now, go back to his ship, sell the tech, forget the alien who saw his grief. But the thought felt empty. The connection, as strange and new as it was, held a pull stronger than any potential profit. "Yes, Kale," Zephyr confirmed, her resonance deepening slightly. My purpose here is not merely observation. It is retrieval of something the original inhabitants sought to protect. It requires passage through increasingly complex energetic wards." She paused, and the amber glow intensified, bathing them both in its warmth. "Your ability to align with the resonance, it is unique. It could allow passage through wards I cannot bypass alone." He understood. She hadn't just been showing him a safe path or testing him. She had been assessing his potential, his compatibility with the station's energies, his volatile core, his grief, his anger, the very things he tried to hide, were somehow the key. "You're asking me to help you break into something sacred?" he asked, though he didn't feel any moral outrage. He was a scavenger. Sacred meant valuable. Protected, Zephyr corrected. Not necessarily sacred. The original inhabitants, their culture was complex. Their technology was deeply intertwined with their understanding of energy, resonance, and the subtle flows of the cosmos. She began to move down the corridor, her glide effortless. My people have studied their remnants for cycles. There is a specific artifact within the nexus that could change things for my exiled people. He followed her, the rhythmic thrum of her presence a new constant in his awareness. This was more than just a salvage run now. It was an alliance, however temporary, with an alien seeking something vital for her kind. And it involved navigating dangers that his usual skills couldn't handle, dangers that required the strange new vulnerability and alignment he'd just learned. His body might be trained for combat and survival, his mind sharp from years of hard living. But his core was being challenged and awakened in ways he'd never imagined. And he found, to his surprise, that he wasn't afraid. He was curious. He was ready to see where this path led. The corridors leading deeper into the station's core were different. Cleaner, less decayed, but thick with a palpable energy that made the air hum and sparked phantom lights in Kale's peripheral vision. Zephyr's resonance was a constant guide, a thread of calm frequency through the chaotic energetic field. She would pause, her form pulsing with intricate patterns, seemingly listening to the silent language of the wards. Then she would indicate a path, a specific sequence of movements, a certain feeling to project. "Feel the flow, Kale," she instructed, her voice a low hum. "Do not push against the energy. Yield to it. Become fluid." It was unlike anything he'd ever done. He had to quiet his mind, suppress the instinct to analyze and force his way through. He had to feel the subtle currents, the resistance and acceptance of the ward energy, and adjust his own resonance, that volatile core she spoke of, to match it. It was like dancing with an invisible, powerful force. One wrong step, potentially collapsing the energy field, and perhaps him with it. His body remembered the discipline of movement, the balance, the control, but his mind had to learn a new kind of yielding, a new kind of strength found in not fighting. It felt strange, counterintuitive, yet with Zephyr's resonant guidance, it worked. They moved through layers of wards, each more complex than the last, the energy building around them, a symphony of ancient power and alien connection. There were close calls. Once, a sudden spike in the ward energy nearly threw him, a feeling like being hit by an invisible wall. His grief flared, a raw, painful surge, and for a moment, the ward reacted violently, pulsing with hostile red light. Zephyr was instantly there, her resonance flooding his, a wave of calm amber light that soothed the chaos. "Breathe, Kale," she hummed. "Let the feeling pass through. Do not hold it." He focused on her presence, on the steady, grounding frequency she projected, and slowly, the hostile energy subsided. "It amplifies everything," he gasped, leaning against a smooth, cool wall, his heart pounding. "Yes," Zephyr confirmed, her form shimmering with concern, compassion. The patterns were a soft, flowing green now. "The station is sensitive to internal states. Your pain resonates strongly here. It is both a challenge and a key." She paused. "It is also a burden to carry such intensity." He didn't know how to respond. No one had ever acknowledged the burden, only the external signs of his resilience. He just nodded, pushing off the wall, ready to continue. The vulnerability she demanded wasn't just energetic, it was emotional. And in this strange place, under her alien guidance, he was finding that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a weakness after all. They reached a large chamber at the heart of the station. The air here thrummed with power, a deep, steady hum that felt ancient and immense. In the center of the chamber, suspended in a field of shimmering energy, was the artifact. It wasn't large, maybe the size of his fist, a geometric shape of material that seemed to absorb and emit light simultaneously, its surface swirling with patterns that mirrored Zephyr's form. "The Nexus artifact," Zephyr stated, her resonance filled with awe, the center of their power. "It regulates the station's energy flow, and much more." She glided towards it, stopping at the edge of the energy field. The patterns on her form pulsed with a vibrant, almost hungry light. "The final ward is directly around it. It requires a specific resonance signature to bypass." A signature, my people, lost long ago. Kale approached the energy field, feeling the immense power radiating from the artifact. The air crackled. He looked at Zephyr, at the intensity in her form, the quiet desperation in her stance. "And you think my volatile core has the right signature?" he asked, a hint of disbelief in his voice. His pain, his grief, the messy remnants of his past. The key to an ancient alien power source? "It is not the pain itself, Kale," Zephyr explained softly. "It is the intensity, the raw, unfiltered emotional energy. The original inhabitants, they did not separate logic from feeling. Their technology responded to both. Your core, it is a raw nerve of complex emotion. It resonates with a frequency this final ward requires. A frequency born of deep experience, both light and shadow." He felt a surge of something he couldn't name. Not pride, not fear, but a strange sense of destiny, of purpose found in the most unexpected place. His brokenness, the parts of him he thought made him unfit for connection, were exactly what was needed here. He looked at the artifact, then back at Zephyr, seeing the hope in her form. "Okay," he said, taking a deep breath. "How do we do it?" Zephyr turned to face him fully, her form radiating with a powerful, steady light. "We must align our resonance," she stated, her voice lower, more intimate. "Our cores must resonate as one frequency. It requires proximity and absolute trust, both ways." She held out her articulated hand again, not as an invitation this time, but as a request. "You must open your core completely, Kale. Allow me to blend our energies. It is the only way." Her form pulsed, a complex blend of colors now. The amber of warmth, the green of vulnerability, the violet of mystery, and something new, a deep, steady blue that felt like bedrock stability. He looked at her hand, at her form radiating power and trust, and knew this was the moment, the true challenge. The real death match wasn't physical combat, but the terrifying vulnerability of merging his deepest self with this alien being. Kale raised his hand slowly. His own felt clumsy, calloused, undeniably human next to her elegant, articulated digits. He met her unseeing gaze, feeling the weight of the moment, the trust she was offering, the trust she was asking for. This wasn't just bypassing a ward. This felt like forging a link at the most fundamental level. He took another deep breath, steadying himself, and placed his hand in hers. Her touch wasn't skin on skin. It was something softer, firmer, like holding woven energy. As their hands connected, Zephyr's resonance flared, washing over him like a wave. He felt his own internal frequency respond, pulled into sync with hers. It wasn't just his core now, it was his entire being. His senses heightened. The hum of the station became a complex symphony. The faint light in the chamber exploded into intricate patterns visible only to this new sense. He could feel the wards around the artifact, not as a barrier, but as a complex lock, waiting for the right key. "Now," Zephyr hummed, her voice closer, clearer, inside his mind as much as in the air. "Release it, Kale. The pain, the grief, the anger. Let it flow into the resonance. Do not fear its power. We will channel it." It was terrifying. It was also freeing. He didn't fight it. He thought of everything he'd lost, the faces he'd never see again, the life that had been stolen. He let the raw emotion surface, not suppressing it, but pushing it outwards into the resonant field between them, into the connection with Zephyr. It surged, hot and wild, a chaotic energy that threatened to overwhelm him. But Zephyr's presence was there, a steady anchor, a channel. Her own resonance shifted, wrapping around his turbulent energy, shaping it, refining it. The patterns on her form pulsed with intense, brilliant light, swirling and merging with the chaotic energy he was releasing. Their combined resonance hit the final ward. It didn't shatter or collapse. Instead, it seemed to unfold. The shimmering field around the artifact rippled, then parted like a curtain, leaving the object hanging unprotected in the air. Success. They had done it, using his pain, channeled by her unique nature. Kale gasped, the intense emotional release leaving him trembling. He felt spent, raw, utterly vulnerable. Zephyr released his hand slowly, her form still glowing, though less intensely now. The patterns on her surface were calm, serene, a soft, steady white light. "It is done," she stated, her resonance filled with quiet triumph. "The artifact is accessible." She moved forward, gliding into the space where the ward had been, reaching for the object. As her articulated fingers closed around it, the Nexus artifact flared with light, and the energy in the chamber spiked violently. An alarm blared through the station, a harsh, grating sound that shattered the peace. The structure groaned, protesting the artifact's removal. The lights in the chamber flickered, then died, plunging them into darkness save for the faint glow of Zephyr's form and the pulsing light of the artifact in her hand. "They know," Zephyr said, her resonance sharp with urgency. "The Guardians. The station is alerting them. We must go. Now." She turned, the artifact held carefully. "Guardians?" Kale asked, his mind still reeling from the emotional and energetic exertion. He hadn't accounted for this. Of course, something this powerful wouldn't be left unguarded forever. "Echoes of the original inhabitants," Zephyr replied, already moving back towards the corridor. "Or their automated defenses. It matters not. They will seek to reclaim the artifact, and they will not be merciful." Her resonance pulsed with new frequency, a low, urgent thrum that propelled him into action. The connection they'd forged, the vulnerability they'd shared, was instantly replaced by the cold, hard reality of escape. His survival instinct slammed back into place, sharp and demanding. He grabbed his pack, secured the data core that now felt insignificant, and followed Zephyr into the darkness, his mind racing, his body ready. The bond they had just created would be tested immediately, not by internal demons, but by external deadly foes. The station was alive now, but not with the peaceful hum of ancient energy. It pulsed with a frantic, hostile rhythm. Automated defenses activated. Laser grids flickered into existence in corridors. Floor panels shifted, revealing deep pits. Metallic sentinels resembling angular, multi-legged insects scuttled from hidden alcoves. Kale and Zephyr moved like shadows, their recent shared vulnerability hardening into a shared determination to survive. Kale's physical prowess came into its own. He dodged laser fire with movements honed by years of dodging far less sophisticated weapons. He anticipated the shifting floors, using his balance and agility to leap over newly formed gaps. Zephyr guided him with her resonance, warning him of invisible energy barriers or areas about to collapse, while he used his body to clear physical obstructions and fend off the mechanical guardians. He didn't have his plasma cutter out constantly. Sometimes a well-placed kick, a precise strike to a joint, or using the environment, bringing down debris on a sentinel, luring them into a laser grid, was more effective. It was a practical application of his training, the brutal dance of survival he knew intimately. He moved, breathed, and fought with Zephyr's resonance as his guide, her presence a constant awareness in his mind, a pulse of shared purpose. She held the artifact, its light now a beacon in the oppressive darkness, making them a target, but also illuminating their frantic path. They reached a section of maintenance tunnels, tight and choked with ancient conduits. It offered cover, but also limited movement. A pursuing sentinel was close behind. Kale turned, bracing himself in the narrow passage. It was too narrow for the sentinel to use its full range of motion. "Go!" he yelled to Zephyr over the shriek of the alarm. "I'll slow it down." Zephyr hesitated for only a fraction of a second. He felt her resonance surge with something that felt like protest, like fear for him. But then she nodded, her form a blur of motion as she squeezed deeper into the tunnel, the artifact's light bobbing away. Kale faced the sentinel. It advanced, its metallic legs scrabbling on the floor. This was his kind of fight. Close quarters, leveraging the environment, using precision over brute force. He waited until it was almost on him, then dodged sideways, using the narrowness of the tunnel to force it to overextend. He struck at its knee joint a sharp, focused blow, using the momentum of his body. The joint buckled with a screech of tortured metal. The sentinel stumbled, trying to recover, its weapons tracking him slowly in the confined space. He didn't give it a chance. He moved again, a low sweep taking out its other leg, sending it crashing to ground in a shower of sparks. He didn't linger to finish it. More were coming. He scrambled past the disabled machine, following the faint light of the artifact. Following Zephyr's receding resonance, he caught up to her near an access hatch that led to the station's exterior docking ports. They could see the faint outline of his ship through the grime-covered port, a small, beat-up freighter that suddenly looked like the most beautiful sight in the galaxy. But the hatch was sealed, locked down by the station's defenses. "It's sealed," Kale shouted, grabbing for his cutting tools. But knowing it would take too long, Zephyr stood before the hatch, the artifact held aloft. Its light pulsed, matching the frantic alarm, but also emitting a deep, resonant frequency that Kale now felt in his bones. "The artifact can override the lockdown," she said, her voice strained, her form shimmering with exertion. "But it requires immense energy and precise alignment with the station's core frequency. I am depleted from navigating the wards." She turned to him, the patterns on her form flickering erratically, shades of gray and black appearing amidst the light. "Your core, Kale. It resonates with the station's power. It is volatile but strong. We must use it." He understood. The same energy, his pain and intensity, that opened the wards was now needed to force open the escape route. But she was depleted. It would require him to channel it even more strongly, with less of her stabilizing influence. It felt dangerous, like playing with a raw, exposed power source. But they were trapped. He nodded, stepping up beside her. "Okay, tell me what to do." Zephyr placed a hand holding the artifact against the hatch. She extended her other hand towards him, reaching for his chest, towards that core she spoke of. "Place your hand here," she directed, her resonance weak but steady. "Open your core completely. Let the energy flow through me, through the artifact, into the hatch's override. Do not resist anything, Kale. Not the power, not your pain." He placed his hand over her extended, articulated digits, directly above his heart. Her form felt cooler now, almost fragile. He closed his eyes for a moment, focusing inward, finding that raw, turbulent energy he usually kept locked away. He grasped it, pulled it to the surface, amplified by the urgency of the situation. He pushed it outwards through his hand, into Zephyr, into the artifact. The energy surge was instantaneous, overwhelming. It felt like his very being was being pulled apart, channeled into a torrent of raw power. Pain, grief, anger, all that flowed out of him, amplified 1,000 times. Zephyr's form flared in response, absorbing the power, her patterns swirling with violent, chaotic colors, mirroring the storm inside him. The artifact in her other hand pulsed with blinding light, slamming against the hatch. He heard Zephyr cry out, a sound that wasn't a voice but a discordant shriek of resonance. The power was too much, too raw, too volatile for her to handle alone in her weakened state. He felt her struggling to contain it, felt the strain on her, and a fierce wave of protective instinct washed over him. He wouldn't let her break. He focused, not just on releasing the energy, but on controlling it, shaping it, remembering the discipline of his training, applying that same focus to this internal, energetic storm. It wasn't about releasing it wildly. It was about directing it, channeling it with purpose. He felt a shift. The chaotic energy smoothed, became focused, a directed beam aimed at the hatch. Zephyr's shriek subsided, replaced by a low groan, and her resonance, though still strained, regained its steady rhythm. The hatch groaned in response to the focused power, sparks flying, seals rupturing. Slowly, agonizingly, it began to cycle open. Kale held a connection, pouring everything into it, his body trembling, his mind stretched thin. The hatch was opening, inch by painful inch. They were almost through, almost free. The hatch finally hissed open, revealing the blessed, cold vacuum of space and the familiar outline of his ship. Kale collapsed against the frame. Gasping, the energy flow cut off abruptly. Zephyr stumbled back, her form flickering like a dying flame, the light on her patterns dim and unstable. The artifact fell from her hand, clattering onto the metal floor of the docking port. Zephyr, Kale reached for her, catching her as her form seemed to waver, threatening to dissipate. She felt fragile, cool to the touch, her resonance barely a whisper against his hand. He held her, supporting her weight, her strange, alien body yielding against his. He could feel the drain the last surge had taken on her. She had pushed herself too far. "The artifact," she murmured, her resonance weak. He looked at the object on the floor, then back at her. It represented everything she had risked, everything she had pushed herself for. But she needed him. He scooped her up carefully, surprised by her lightness. He held her against his chest, feeling the faint, unstable hum of her presence against his own rapidly recovering core. "Forget the artifact," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion and sudden, fierce concern. "We're getting out of here. Together." He turned, carrying her towards the airlock of his ship, leaving the ancient artifact behind, realizing that something far more precious had been salvaged from ruins. Cale stumbled into the airlock of his ship, Zephyr held carefully in his arms. The sterile, familiar environment of his freighter was a stark contrast to the ancient, humming chaos of the station. He sealed the outer hatch, the mechanical hiss of sound of pure relief. Inside the airlock, the emergency lights cast a weak, flickering glow. Zephyr's form was still dim, her patterns barely visible, her resonance a faint, erratic pulse against his chest. He carried her through the inner hatch into the main cabin. The worn synth leather of his pilot's chair, the scattered tools and salvage tech, the faint, lingering smell of stale coffee and engine grease. It was home, a solitary, functional home. But he laid Zephyr gently on the narrow cot, bolted to the wall. Her form solidified slightly in the steadier light, the shifting patterns regaining a hint of color, though still muted. She looked fragile. The dominant, resonant being who had pulsed with power and navigated ancient wards seemed diminished, vulnerable. He knelt beside the cot, uncertain what to do. He didn't know how to care for an alien whose body was made of resonant energy and shifting light. "Zephyr," he whispered, his voice rough. Her form stirred slightly. Her resonance pulsed, a tiny wave of awareness against his hand, which still rested on her arm. "Cale," she hummed, the sound weak but clear. "You left the artifact." "It wasn't worth losing you over," he said simply. He meant it more than he could express. In that moment in the airlock, faced with her fading presence, the alien artifact that had seemed so important, the key to her people's future, had become irrelevant. All that mattered was the fragile, vibrant being in his arms. Her form shifted, and he had the impression of her tilting her head towards him. The patterns on her surface pulsed with a soft, warm light, stronger than before. It felt like gratitude, like surprise. "No one has ever chosen me over a core objective," she resonated, her voice gaining a little strength. "Well, there's a first time for everything," Cale said, a small, tired smile touching his lips. He felt drained, physically and emotionally, but the oppressive weight he usually carried was still lighter. The vulnerability he'd allowed, the energy he'd channeled, had somehow cleansed something within him. He looked at her, really looked at her in the dim cabin light, seeing the complex, beautiful reality of her alien form, feeling the gentle pulse of her unique resonance. The fear was gone, replaced by a profound sense of connection, of shared experience and mutual protection. "You are different, Cale," Zephyr hummed, and her form seemed to soften, the edges blurring slightly, inviting a different kind of closeness. "Your pain, your strength, they are intertwined. And your capacity for connection, it is vast." He didn't know how to reply to that. He, who had spent years avoiding connection, burying his pain, finding strength only in isolation and control. But she had seen through all of it, and instead of finding him broken, she had found him resonant, useful, and now valued. She shifted on the cot, moving slightly closer to the edge where he knelt. Her form pulsed, and the resonance between them deepened, growing warmer, more complex, laced with something that felt like pure, unadulterated emotion. It wasn't just a hum of energetic alignment now. It was something else, something intimate. The air in the cabin grew charged, not with the chaotic energy of the station, but with the focused, intensifying presence of their joined beings. He felt his heart pound, not from fear or exertion, but from a burgeoning sense of anticipation, of desire. He reached out tentatively, his human hand hovering near her form. This was uncharted territory. Physical touch had been limited, practical. This was different. He wanted to feel the reality of her, the substance behind the light and resonance. Zephyr responded to his unspoken question. Her form shifted, consolidating slightly, and she moved her hand, the elegant articulated digits, to meet his. Her touch was still not like skin, but it was solid, warm, alive. As their hands met, the resonance between them surged, a wave of pure feeling. The patterns on her form exploded in color, vibrant, swirling hues of deep crimson, radiant gold, soft rose. It was a language he didn't understand, but he felt its meaning deep within his core, passion, intensity, acceptance. He leaned closer, drawn by the irresistible pull of her presence, by the silent invitation in her touch, in her light. He felt the warmth radiating from her, felt the intricate, intoxicating dance of her resonance against his own. He didn't know what came next, but he knew he wanted to explore every unknown facet of this connection, this being who had seen his deepest pain and offered him not mercy, but connection. His survival skills had gotten him this far, but it was his willingness to be vulnerable, guided by her, that had led him to this moment. And as he held her hand, feeling the electric hum of their joined energy, he knew his life, his path, had irrevocably changed. The silent story between their cores had only just begun.